Tycoon witnesses pregnant ex-wife collapse in public. The outcome is astonishing, Mr. Chun. Your 9 a.m. is waiting in the conference room. His assistant, Sarah, fell into step beside him, tablet in hand. Numbers? Lucas asked curtly, his dark eyes fixed on the elevator ahead. Quarterly profits up 23%. The Shanghai project is exceeding projections by... Lucas tuned her out, his mind already racing through the day's negotiations. At 35, he'd built Chen Enterprises from the ground up, transforming it from a modest real estate firm into a multinational corporation. Every decision, every calculated risk had led to this moment, the pinnacle of success. Yet, as he caught his reflection in the mirrored elevator walls, he noticed the subtle signs of exhaustion etched around his eyes. The same signs Sophia had pointed out months ago before. Mr. Chan? Sarah's voice pulled him back to reality. Should I reschedule the board meeting? No, he said firmly, straightening his tie. Keep everything as planned. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, and Lucas stepped out, pushing away the memory of Sophia's last words to him. Your empire will keep you warm at night, Lucas. I hope it's worth it. As he walked past his corner office, his eyes lingered on the single photograph he hadn't removed, their wedding day. Sophia's radiant smile, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her hand intertwined with his. They'd been so young, so full of dreams. He'd promised her the world, not realizing that in his pursuit to give it to her, he'd lose her entirely. The contracts are ready for your review. Sarah's voice interrupted his thoughts again. Lucas nodded, his jaw tightening. Send them in. And Sarah? Hold all calls unless it's absolutely urgent. The door closed behind him, and Lucas sank into his leather chair, the weight of his success pressing down on his shoulders like a heavy crown. The morning sun caught the gold band he still hadn't removed from his finger, a reminder of everything he'd built and everything he'd lost. Time to focus, he muttered to himself, opening the first file. After all, empires weren't built on regrets, and Lucas Chun had an empire to run, even if the throne had never felt more lonely. Just another day, little one, she whispered, feeling a gentle kick in response. A small smile played across her lips, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. The studio space behind her was transformed into a makeshift dance area, with a ballet bar installed along one wall. Posters from her performing days adorned the walls, reminders of the career she'd put on hold, first for marriage, and now for motherhood. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. Sophia, darling, are you coming to class today? Maria's voice, her old dance instructor, crackled through the speaker. Yes, just to watch and help with the junior students, Sophia replied, adjusting her maternity dress. The doctor said light movement is fine, but you're being careful. Good girl. Maria paused. Have you told him yet? Sophia's hand instinctively tightened around her belly. No, she breathed, watching her reflection's face tense. And I won't, Maria. Lucas made his choice long ago. His precious empire means more to him than any family ever could. Moving to the kitchen, Sophia prepared her morning tea, a ritual that had replaced her beloved coffee since the pregnancy. Her gaze drifted to the small sonogram picture magnetized to her refrigerator, her secret joy, her future, her reason to keep moving forward. Miss Independent now, aren't we? She murmured to herself, echoing Lucas's last sarcastic words to her in court. The memory stung, but she straightened her shoulders. She'd been more than just Lucas Chen's wife before, and she'd be more than his ex-wife now. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Sophia pressed her hand against the spot, feeling the movement beneath her palm. You're right, little one. We've got dance class to attend, and life doesn't stop for old memories. Gathering her dance bag and keys, Sophia paused at her door, catching one final glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. The woman who stared back wasn't the same bright-eyed ballerina who'd fallen in love with the ambitious young businessman 5 years ago. She was stronger now. Her eyes held wisdom that came from heartbreak, and her posture spoke of quiet determination. Ready to face another day? She asked her reflection, one hand still resting on her bump. The answer came in the form of another kick, and despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling genuinely this time. She had her own empire to build now, one made of pirouettes, baby booties, and the kind of strength that comes from starting over. As she stepped out into the morning air, Sophia didn't notice the familiar black luxury car turning onto her street, nor did she realize how close her carefully constructed new world was to colliding with the one she'd left behind. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with promise. Sophia, fresh from her performance as the lead in Swan Lake, still wore traces of stage makeup as she navigated through the after-party crowd. That's when she first saw him, Lucas Chen, standing alone by the champagne fountain, looking somewhat out of place among the artistic crowd. "You dance like you're telling a story," his voice had caught her off guard. "Every movement seems to have a purpose." She turned, meeting those intense dark eyes for the first time. That's exactly what ballet is. A story without words. Lucas Chen, he'd introduced himself, extending his hand. "I confess I know nothing about ballet, but I couldn't take my eyes off you tonight." Their whirlwind romance had been the talk of both the business and arts communities. The ambitious real estate developer and the principal ballerina, it was like a modern fairy tale. "I promise you'll never have to choose between your passion and our love," Lucas had whispered on their wedding night as they swayed to their first dance. "We'll build our dreams together." The memory shifted to their first apartment, modest by Lucas's later standards, but perfect for them. Sophia had converted the spare room into a practice space, and Lucas would often work from home just to watch her dance. "Tell me about your day while you stretch," he'd say, his laptop forgotten as she moved through her routine. Those early days were filled with shared dreams, stolen kisses between meetings and rehearsals, and late-night conversations about their future. But success, like a double-edged sword, had begun to change everything. With each new project, each expansion, Lucas spent more time at the office. Sophia's practice room gathered dust. "Just one more deal, my love," became his mantra. This merger could change everything for us. The last happy memory flickered like a dying flame, their third anniversary. Lucas had surprised her by clearing his schedule, recreating their first meeting at the ballet. For one evening, they were that young couple again, full of dreams and love. "I miss this," Sophia had whispered against his chest as they danced in their empty penthouse. "I miss us. We'll have more time soon," he'd promised. "Once the company stabilizes." But soon never came. The company grew, and Lucas grew with it, leaving less and less room for their shared life. Sophia's performances went unattended, her achievements celebrated with quick phone calls rather than champagne toasts. Back in the present, Sophia blinked away tears, her hand instinctively moving to protect her unborn child. The ring finger on her left hand, though bare now, still bore the phantom weight of promises broken. "Your father was a different man once," she whispered to her bump, her voice barely audible above the city noise. "He knew how to dance in the rain and laugh until sunrise. Sometimes I wonder if that man is still in there, buried under all those spreadsheets and contracts." A sudden wave of dizziness interrupted her thoughts, forcing her to steady herself against a nearby cafe window. The world began to spin, and as her vision blurred, she caught a glimpse of a familiar silhouette rushing toward her from across the street. "Lucas," she whispered, before everything went black. In the matter of Chan versus Santos, Judge Harrison's voice had echoed through the nearly empty courtroom. "The divorce is hereby granted." The scratch of the judge's pen had seemed deafening in the silence. Sophia sat rigid in her chair, her cream silk blouse concealing the earliest signs of her pregnancy, a secret she discovered just days before the final hearing. Lucas stood at the opposite table, his attorney whispering something in his ear. He looked impeccable as always in his tailored suit, but Sophia noticed the slight tremor in his hand as he signed the final papers. "Mr. Chan, Mrs. Miss Santos," the judge corrected himself, "do either of you wish to make any final statements for the record?" Sophia's throat tightened as Lucas finally turned to look at her. For a moment, she saw a flicker of the man she'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, human, perhaps even regretful. Lucas began, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. No statements, Your Honor. His attorney interrupted smoothly. We've settled all matters privately. Sophia stood, gathering her purse with trembling hands. This was her moment to tell him about the baby, to change everything. Instead, she heard herself say, I wish you success with your empire, Mr. Chun. I hope it keeps you warm at night. Lucas's jaw tightened, his business mask sliding back into place. Congratulations on your independence, Sophia. Isn't that what you wanted? To be free of my controlling ways. The words hung between them like shattered glass. Sophia's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, a gesture that went unnoticed by everyone in the room. As she walked past him toward the door, Lucas caught her arm gently. The familiar scent of his cologne made her heart ache. Sophia, he whispered, his voice carrying a weight she couldn't decipher. Was there ever a chance for us? She pulled away, tears threatening to fall. There was always a chance, Lucas. You just never took it. The courtroom doors had closed behind her with a final, heavy thud. In the marble hallway, Sophia had allowed herself one moment of weakness, pressing her hand against the cool wall as tears finally fell. Miss Santos, her attorney had called after her. The papers for your name change. Keep it, Sophia had replied, straightening her shoulders. Some parts of our story I'm not ready to erase. Now, as consciousness slipped away from her on the busy street, Sophia could have sworn she heard Lucas's voice again, no longer cold and distant as it had been in court, but filled with panic and concern. Sophia, someone call an ambulance. The words seemed to come from far away. Stay with me, please, Sophia. The last thing she felt before darkness claimed her completely was the sensation of strong, familiar arms catching her as she fell, and the faint scent of the cologne she tried so hard to forget. The pregnancy test had clattered into the sink, its 2 pink lines unmistakable. Sophia's hands gripped the bathroom counter, her knuckles white as she stared at her reflection in the mirror. This can't be happening, she whispered to her pale reflection. Not now. Her phone buzzed on the counter, another email from her lawyer about the final divorce settlement. Sophia's hand moved protectively to her still flat stomach. What am I going to do? She murmured, sliding down to sit on the cold tile floor. The morning sun streamed through the bathroom window, casting long shadows across the space that still felt too empty without Lucas's belongings. Later that day, in her doctor's office, the reality had become undeniable. You're about 6 weeks along, Mrs. Chun. I'm sorry, Miss Santos, Dr. Reynolds said, turning the ultrasound monitor toward her. Would you like me to print a picture for the father? Sophia's throat tightened. No, she managed. He doesn't need to know. Dr. Reynolds frowned. Sophia, considering your history with Lucas Chen and his public profile, please, Sophia interrupted, her voice breaking. This baby is all I have left that's truly mine. He'll try to control everything just like he always does. The best lawyers, the best doctors, the best schools. He'll turn this into another business project to manage. She'd spent that night choreographing steps across her empty apartment, one hand constantly resting on her abdomen, dancing with her secret. The baby was conceived during their last attempt at reconciliation, a night when Lucas had come home early, remembering the man he used to be, before the empire consumed him. Your father once danced with me in the rain, she whispered to her unborn child. He used to say that some things were more precious than profit margins. But that man, he disappeared into boardrooms and business deals. Maria, her old dance instructor, had been the first to know. You can't hide this forever, Querida, she'd warned. A baby has a way of making its own announcements. I'll figure something out, Sophia had insisted. I just need time. Time to prepare. Time to be strong enough to face him. Now, as consciousness slowly returned and the sounds of an ambulance siren pierced through her fog, Sophia could feel Lucas's presence. His cologne, his touch, his voice, everything she tried to protect herself and their baby from. Blood pressures dropping, a paramedic's voice cut through her thoughts. Sir, you'll need to let go of her hand so we can... I'm not leaving her, Lucas's voice was firm, but she heard the fear in it. She's pregnant. How far along is she? Why didn't she tell me? Sophia tried to speak, to maintain her carefully constructed walls, but darkness pulled her under again. The last thought that crossed her mind was a prayer. Please, let our baby be okay. Even if it means facing everything I've been running from. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and Sophia's secret, the one she'd guarded so carefully, was finally exposed in the most dramatic way possible. The careful choreography of her new life was about to change, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Mr. Chun, the Beijing investors are waiting. Sarah's voice faded as Lucas pressed his hand against the glass, his eyes fixed on the familiar figure below. Sophia. Her grace was unmistakable, even from this height. He watched her pause near the cafe across the street, one hand resting on her. His heart stopped. Cancel everything, he ordered, already moving toward the door. But sir, the merger... I said cancel. His voice echoed through the office as he rushed to the elevator, loosening his tie. The descent felt endless, each floor triggering a new realization. Pregnant. Sophia was pregnant. His Sophia. Through the lobby, past security, into the street. Time seemed to slow as he saw her sway, her hand reaching out to steady herself. No, 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 he muttered, breaking into a run. Cars honked as he darted through traffic, his perfectly tailored suit forgotten. She turned slightly, her lips forming his name just before her knees buckled. Lucas lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the ground. Sophia! His voice cracked with panic. Someone call an ambulance. Cradling her in his arms, he noticed how fragile she felt, how different from the strong dancer he'd known. Her belly, rounded with their child. It had to be their child pressed against him. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered, brushing hair from her face. The gathering crowd blurred around them as memories flooded back. Their first dance, their last fight, all the moments in between. A street vendor rushed over with water. Someone mentioned the ambulance was 3 minutes out. Lucas barely heard them, focused entirely on Sophia's pale face and shallow breathing. Sir, a bystander touched his shoulder. Maybe we should move her into the shade. Don't touch her, Lucas snapped, his protective instincts flaring. To Sophia, he whispered, hold on, my love. Just hold on. The wail of sirens grew closer. Lucas felt Sophia's fingers twitch in his hand. The same hand that had once guided her through their wedding dance. The same hand that had signed their divorce papers. BP's dropping, the paramedic announced, efficiently taking control. How far along is she? I don't know, Lucas admitted, the words burning his throat. I just found out. She's my... What was she now? Ex-wife seemed too cold. The love of his life too presumptuous. Sir, we need to move quickly. Are you riding with us? Lucas nodded, never letting go of Sophia's hand as they loaded her into the ambulance. The sirens screamed through downtown traffic, but all he could hear was his own heart pounding and Sophia's soft, irregular breathing. I'm here, he whispered, thumb brushing over her knuckles. I'm not leaving this time. Whatever happens, whatever you've been keeping from me, I'm here. As the ambulance raced toward the hospital, Lucas Chen, the man who controlled billions in assets, who could make or break deals with a single word, felt utterly powerless. His empire, his meetings, his carefully constructed world of power and control meant nothing in this moment. All that mattered was the woman lying unconscious before him, carrying what he suspected was their child, and the devastating realization that he might have already lost them both. 7 months pregnant, blood pressure critically low, the paramedic reported to the waiting medical team. Patient lost consciousness approximately 20 minutes ago. Sir, you'll need to wait here. A nurse blocked Lucas's path as they wheeled Sophia through another set of doors. Like hell I will, he growled. But the nurse stood firm. Mr. Chun, yes, I know who you are, but right now your money and influence won't help her. Let our team do their job. Lucas ran his hands through his disheveled hair, watching helplessly through the window as doctors surrounded Sophia. His Sophia, their baby. Can you at least tell me if... His voice cracked. The baby... A monitor's urgent beeping interrupted his plea. The medical team moved with increased urgency, their voices sharp and professional. "Get Dr. Matthews from obstetrics." Stat. Lucas pressed his forehead against the cold glass, his breath fogging the surface. The mighty Lucas Chun, reduced to an observer in what might be the most important moment of his life. His phone buzzed incessantly. Sarah, board members, the Beijing investors. He silenced them all with trembling fingers. "Mr. Chan?" Dr. Matthews appeared beside him, her face serious but kind. "We've stabilized Sophia's condition. She's experiencing pregnancy-induced hypertension, which led to the fainting spell. We're monitoring both her and the baby closely." "The baby?" Lucas's throat tightened. "Is it? Your child is stable, though we're concerned about the stress levels. Mr. Chun, according to our records, Ms. Santos has been receiving prenatal care here. She's carrying a boy." "You didn't know?" Lucas felt his knees weaken. "A son. He had a son. Can I see her?" Dr. Matthews nodded, leading him to a private room. Sophia lay there, looking small against the white sheets, monitors beeping steadily around her. An ultrasound machine showed their son's heartbeat strong, defiant, like his mother. Lucas approached slowly, taking in the sight of her rounded belly, now more visible under the hospital gown. He sank into the chair beside her bed, gently taking her hand. "A boy," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "We're having a boy, Sophia. Why didn't you tell me? Did you think I wouldn't?" He couldn't finish the sentence. Sophia stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering. Lucas leaned forward, his heart pounding. "Lucas?" Her voice was barely audible. "I'm here." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm right here." Her eyes opened fully, confusion turning to recognition, then to fear. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held firm. "The baby," she started, "is fine. He's fine. He's strong like his mother." Lucas's voice cracked. "Were you ever going to tell me I had a son?" Sophia turned her face away, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I couldn't let him become another project for you to manage, another asset in your empire." The words hit Lucas like physical blows. Is that really how she saw him now? How far had he fallen from the man she'd once loved? A nurse entered to check Sophia's vitals, breaking the tension. Blood pressures still elevated. "You need to stay calm, Ms. Santos." Lucas stood, still holding Sophia's hand. "We don't have to do this now. Just rest. Get stronger. But know this, I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I'm going to prove to you that some things matter more than empires." As he stepped back, letting the medical team work, Lucas Chun made a silent vow to his unborn son and the woman he'd never stopped loving. This time, he wouldn't let success blind him to what truly mattered. This time, he would get it right. A son? He whispered to himself, stopping at the window to stare at the city lights below. The same city where he'd built his empire. The same lights that had kept him working late while his marriage crumbled. His phone buzzed again. Sarah's message read, "Beijing investors threatening to pull out. Board calling emergency meeting. What should I tell them?" Lucas's reflection in the window caught his eye. He barely recognized himself. The perfectly styled hair was disheveled, his usual confident stance replaced by the uncertain posture of a man whose world had just shifted on its axis. "Mr. Chan?" A young nurse appeared at the door. "We have the ultrasound images you requested." His hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope. Inside, black and white images showed a perfectly formed little boy, his son. Lucas sank into a chair, studying every detail. Tiny fingers, a defined profile that somehow reminded him of Sophia, a strong spine. "You're already more precious than any deal I've ever made." He whispered to the image, his voice thick with emotion. A memory surfaced, Sophia dancing in their penthouse, telling him she wanted to start a family. He'd been on a call, half listening, promising soon while reviewing contract terms. "God, I was such a fool," he muttered, running a hand over his face. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his father. "Lucas," the older Chen's voice was sharp. "The board is in chaos. What's this about you abandoning the Beijing meeting? Father, Lucas interrupted, his voice steady for the first time since seeing Sophia collapse. I'm going to be a father. Silence filled the line. Sophia, she's pregnant. 7 months. It's a boy. Lucas. His father's tone softened slightly. The company can wait, Lucas finished firmly. I've spent years building an empire that means nothing without someone to share it with. I won't make your mistakes, Father. I won't sacrifice my family for success. He ended the call before his father could respond, standing to look at the city again. Each glittering building represented a deal, a victory, a step toward the empire he dreamed of. But now, holding the ultrasound picture of his son, those victories felt hollow. Mr. Chan? Dr. Matthews appeared. Sophia's asking for you. Lucas straightened, tucking the ultrasound image into his shirt pocket, close to his heart. As he walked toward Sophia's room, each step felt like a choice between the man he'd become and the man he needed to be. At her door, he paused, taking a deep breath. Through the window, he could see Sophia lying there, one hand protectively cradling her belly. Their son. I choose you, he whispered, as if making a vow. Both of you, always, with that promise echoing in his heart. Lucas Chan, the man who'd built an empire on calculated risks and strategic decisions, prepared to face the biggest challenge of his life, proving to Sophia that he could be the man she'd fallen in love with again, the father their son deserved. He pushed open the door, ready to begin the most important negotiation of his life, not for a business deal, but for a second chance at love and family. He's been quite active, Lucas's voice came from the doorway. The nurses say that's a good sign. Sophia tensed, her fingers gripping the hospital blanket. How long have you been here? 6 hours, 23 minutes. He answered, moving closer but maintaining a careful distance. Not that I'm counting. The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken words. Sophia watched as Lucas struggled to maintain his usual composed demeanor. Why didn't you tell me? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophia turned to look out the window, blinking back tears. Would it have mattered? Would you have even heard me over the sound of your empire growing? Sophia. Lucas stepped closer, and she could smell his familiar cologne mixed with coffee and worry. This is my son. No, she cut him off, turning back to face him with fierce determination. This is our son. Not a Chun Industries heir, not a business asset, not a legacy project. Our son. Lucas flinched as if she'd struck him. Is that really what you think of me? That I'd see our child as a business opportunity? Wouldn't you? Sophia's voice cracked. Everything in your life has a strategic value, Lucas. Even our marriage became just another item on your schedule. The monitor's beeping increased slightly, and Lucas glanced at it with concern. Your blood pressure, he started, but Sophia wasn't finished. Do you know what terrified me most? She continued, tears now flowing freely. That you'd try to control this too. That you'd sweep in with your lawyers and your plans and your perfectly organized life, and turn this miracle into another project to manage. That you'd do to our child what you did to us. Prioritize everything else until there was nothing left. Lucas moved to the window, his silhouette stark against the city lights. For a moment, he looked lost, an expression Sophia had never seen on his face before. I found the ultrasound pictures in your office, she admitted quietly. The ones from our fertility treatments 2 years ago. They were filed under personal projects pending. Lucas turned sharply, his face pale. Sophia, those files were perfectly organized, dated, and archived, she finished bitterly. Like everything else in your life. A kick from the baby made her gasp softly, and Lucas instinctively moved toward her before stopping himself. May I? He asked hesitantly, gesturing toward her belly. Sophia studied his face, the face she'd once known better than her own. Behind his careful mask, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Fear. Real, raw fear. Slowly, she nodded. Lucas approached, gently placing his hand on her rounded belly. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Lucas's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. "Hello, son," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm your father, and I promise you, I'm going to do better. So much better." Sophia watched as Lucas Chan, the man who commanded boardrooms with unwavering confidence, wiped tears from his eyes with his free hand. "Sophia," he looked up at her, his hands still on their child. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but please, let me prove to you that I can be different, that I can be the man you fell in love with again, the man our son deserves." Before she could respond, the baby kicked again, right against Lucas's palm, as if casting his own vote in this pivotal moment between his parents. "You can't go in there," a nurse's voice protested. The door burst open, revealing Sophia's mother, Amelia Santos, her eyes wild with worry and anger. Behind her, Lucas's father, Richard Chun, stood with a stern expression. "Sophia, Minha filha." Amelia rushed to her daughter's side, pushing past Lucas. "What has he done to you?" "May, please." Sophia tried to calm her mother. "I'm fine. The baby's fine." Richard Chen's commanding voice filled the room. "Lucas, a word. Now." Lucas hesitated, his hand still on Sophia's belly. He looked at her, a silent plea in his eyes. Sophia nodded slightly. "Go. We'll be fine." As Lucas followed his father out, Amelia turned on Sophia. "How could you keep this from us? From me? Your own mother?" Sophia sighed, feeling the weight of her secrets. "May, it's complicated. I didn't want anyone to know, especially not the father of your child?" Amelia's voice was sharp. "Sophia, we raised you better than this. You don't understand." Sophia's voice cracked. "Lucas, he changed. The man I married disappeared into his work, into his empire. I couldn't let my child become just another asset for him to manage." Outside in the hallway, a similar confrontation was unfolding between Lucas and his father. "Have you lost your mind?" Richard hissed. "The Beijing deal is falling apart. The board is in chaos. And here you are, playing house with your ex-wife." Lucas straightened, meeting his father's gaze. "That ex-wife is carrying my son. Your grandson." Richard's expression softened for a moment before hardening again. "A child doesn't change the fact that you have responsibilities, Lucas. The company can wait." Lucas interrupted, his voice firm. "I've spent years building an empire at the cost of everything else. I won't make your mistakes, father. I won't sacrifice my family for success." Inside the room, Sophia could hear snippets of the conversation. Her heart raced as she realized the magnitude of what Lucas was saying. Amelia noticed her daughter's distress. "Sophia, what is it? Is it the baby?" "No, May," Sophia whispered, her eyes fixed on the door. "It's hope. I think it's hope." The door opened again, and Lucas walked back in, his father close behind. The tension in the room was palpable. Mr. and Mrs. Santos, Mr. Chun, a doctor, entered, oblivious to the family drama. "I have Sophia's latest test results. The baby is doing well, but Sophia needs to avoid stress. Perhaps we could limit visitors." Lucas stepped forward. "Of course, doctor. Whatever Sophia needs." Amelia bristled. "And who are you to decide? You divorced her, remember?" "Enough." Sophia's voice was stronger than she felt. "All of you, please. This stress isn't good for the baby. May, Papa, Mr. Chen, I appreciate your concern, but right now I need rest." Lucas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course, I'll make sure everything is taken care of." As the families reluctantly filed out, Lucas lingered for a moment. "Sophia, I meant what I said. I'm here, for both of you, whatever it takes." Sophia watched him go, her emotions a turbulent mix of hope, fear, and something else she wasn't ready to name. As the door closed, leaving her alone with the steady beep of monitors, Sophia placed both hands on her belly. "Well, little one," she whispered to her unborn son, "it seems you've already started shaking up the world, just like your father." She closed her eyes, exhausted but oddly at peace. The walls she'd built around her heart had begun to crack, letting in a glimmer of the love she thought she'd lost forever. As she drifted off to sleep, Sophia wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a chance for their family after all. "Come in," she called, expecting a nurse. Instead, Lucas entered, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His usual impeccable suit was replaced by jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Dark circles under his eyes hinted at sleepless nights. "Hey," he said softly, his voice hesitant. "I thought you might need a ride home." Sophia paused, studying him. This Lucas was so different from the man she'd divorced, vulnerable, uncertain. Thank you, but my mother is coming." Lucas nodded, running a hand through his hair. "Of course. I wanted to talk to you. About everything." Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, one hand resting protectively on her belly. "Lucas, please," he interrupted, moving closer. "Just hear me out. These past few days I've done a lot of thinking. About us, about our son, about the man I've become." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, hands trembling slightly as he unfolded it. "I made some calls. This is my resignation letter to the board." Sophia's eyes widened. "What? Lucas, you can't just dash." "I can, and I have," he said firmly. "I've spent years chasing success, thinking it was what mattered most. But seeing you collapse on that street, realizing I could have lost both of you, it changed everything." He knelt before her, his eyes level with hers. "I know I don't deserve another chance, Sophia, but I'm asking for one. Not just for me, but for our son. I want to be the father he deserves, the man you fell in love with." Sophia felt tears welling up. "Lucas, your company. It's your life's work." "No," he said, taking her hand gently. "You and our son, you're my life's work. Everything else is just details." The baby kicked, as if affirming his father's words. Sophia placed Lucas's hand on her belly, watching his face soften at the movement. "I can't promise it'll be easy," she whispered. "We've both changed. There's so much hurt, so much to overcome." Lucas nodded, his thumb gently caressing her hand. "I know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy, time, space, anything you need. I just want a chance to prove that I can be better. That we can be better together." Sophia looked into his eyes, seeing not the ruthless businessman she'd grown to resent, but glimpses of the man she'd fallen in love with years ago. The man who had danced with her in the rain, who had dreamed of building a life together. "Okay," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can try. For our son." Relief washed over Lucas's face. He stood, helping Sophia to her feet. As they gathered her things, a new tension filled the air, not of anger or resentment, but of possibility. At the door, Lucas paused. "Sophia, I know it's not my place, but would you let me drive you home? Just this once?" Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but Lucas..." "Yes, this doesn't fix everything. We have a long way to go." He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I know, but it's a start. And right now, that's enough." As they walked out of the hospital together, neither noticed the paparazzi hiding behind a parked car, camera clicking rapidly. The story of Lucas Chen's dramatic board resignation was about to be overshadowed by an even bigger headline, one that would shake the foundations of both their families and the business world they'd left behind. "Miss Santos, I think it's best if you come in right away." Dr. Reynolds's voice was calm but urgent. These symptoms could indicate preterm labor. Panic gripped Sophia as she fumbled for her phone, instinctively dialing Lucas's number. "Sophia?" His voice was groggy with sleep but instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "The baby," she managed, her voice tight with fear. "Something's not right. I need to go to the hospital." "I'm on my way," Lucas said without hesitation. "Don't move. I'll be there in 10 minutes. True to his word, Lucas arrived in record time. As he helped Sophia into the car, she noticed he was still in his pajamas, hair disheveled, worry etched across his face. "It's too early," Sophia whispered, clutching her belly as another wave of pain hit. "He's not ready." Lucas took her hand, squeezing it gently as he navigated the empty streets. "He's strong, Sophia, just like his mother. We're going to get through this." At the hospital, they were immediately whisked to the maternity ward. Dr. Reynolds met them, her face serious. Sophia, we need to run some tests. The baby's heart rate is elevated, and we're concerned about possible placental abruption. As the medical team swarmed around Sophia, Lucas found himself pushed to the sidelines. He watched helplessly as they hooked her up to monitors, drew blood, and performed ultrasounds. Mr. Chan? A nurse approached him. We need to ask you to wait outside. No, Lucas said firmly, his eyes never leaving Sophia. I'm not leaving her. Sophia's eyes met his, filled with fear and gratitude. Lucas, please, stay. Dr. Reynolds nodded, allowing Lucas to remain as they continued their examinations. Hours passed in a blur of tests and anxious waiting. Finally, Dr. Reynolds returned with news. Good news, she said, smiling tiredly. We've managed to stop the contractions. It wasn't placental abruption, but Sophia will need to be on strict bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. Relief washed over both Sophia and Lucas. As the medical team began to clear out, leaving them alone, the gravity of the situation settled in. I was so scared, Sophia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought we were going to lose him. Lucas moved closer, taking her hand in his. But we didn't. He's okay. You're okay. Sophia looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time since he'd arrived. His usually immaculate appearance was gone, replaced by rumpled pajamas and uncombed hair. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of the night's stress. You came, she said softly. Just like that, you came. Lucas's eyes softened. Of course I did. Sophia, I meant what I said. I'm here for both of you, no matter what. A moment of understanding passed between them, deeper than words could express. The doctor said bed rest. Lucas continued, his tone gentle but firm. You'll need help. Let me take care of you. Both of you. Sophia hesitated. Years of built-up walls and mistrust warring with the undeniable truth of Lucas's actions tonight. Okay, she finally agreed. But Lucas, this doesn't mean... I know, he interrupted softly. It doesn't fix everything. But it's a start, right? Sophia nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. A start. As dawn broke outside the hospital windows, casting a soft glow over the room, Sophia and Lucas found themselves at the beginning of a new chapter. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges both medical and emotional. But for the first time in years, they faced it together, united by the precious life they had created. The beeping of the fetal heart monitor filled the room, a steady rhythm that seemed to whisper of hope, of second chances, and of a love that perhaps had never truly died. Mr. Chan, is it true you've resigned from Chan Enterprises for your secret love child? Sophia, how long have you been hiding your pregnancy? Are you two getting back together? Lucas instinctively shielded Sophia from the onslaught, his arm protectively around her as they navigated through the sea of reporters. Sophia's heart raced, her hand clutching her belly, as if to protect their unborn son from the intrusion. No comment, Lucas said firmly, guiding Sophia towards the waiting car. Please, respect our privacy. Once inside the vehicle, Sophia let out a shaky breath. How did they find out? Lucas's jaw clenched. I don't know, but I'll handle it. As they drove away, Sophia's phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls. She glanced at the screen, her face paling. It's everywhere, she whispered. Lucas, look. He took the phone, his eyes widening at the headlines splashed across news sites. Chun Dynasty heir on the way. Tycoon reunites with pregnant ex-wife, love trumps business. Lucas Chun abandons empire for family, dancer's secret. Sophia Santos carries billionaire's baby. I'm so sorry, Sophia, Lucas said, his voice filled with genuine remorse. This is exactly what you were trying to avoid, isn't it? Sophia nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I wanted to protect him from all this, from becoming a headline before he's even born. Lucas took her hand, his touch gentle. We'll get through this together. I promise I'll do everything in my power to shield you both from the media circus. As they arrived at Sophia's apartment, they found more reporters waiting. Lucas turned to Sophia, his expression determined. You don't have to face this alone anymore. Let me help. Come stay at my place. It has better security, and you'll have peace and quiet for your bed rest. Sophia hesitated, the old fears and doubts bubbling up. But as another flash went off outside the car window, she realized she had little choice. Okay, she agreed softly. But Lucas, this is temporary. Until things calm down. He nodded, understanding the unspoken boundaries. Of course, whatever you need. As they made their way to Lucas's penthouse, navigating through back entrances and private elevators to avoid the press, Sophia felt a mix of emotions. Relief at escaping the public eye, gratitude for Lucas's support, and an underlying anxiety about what this new arrangement might mean for them. Once inside the safety of Lucas's home, Sophia sank onto the plush sofa, exhaustion washing over her. Lucas knelt before her, his eyes filled with concern. Are you all right? Can I get you anything? Sophia looked around the familiar yet strange space. The home they once shared, now transformed. Gone were the cold, modern furnishings, replaced by warmer tones and comfortable pieces. Her gaze landed on a framed photo on the side table, their wedding day. You kept it, she whispered, reaching for the picture. Lucas followed her gaze, a soft smile playing at his lips. I never could bring myself to take it down. Sophia, I know this isn't ideal, but I want you to feel safe and comfortable here. This is your space now, for as long as you need it. As he spoke, Sophia felt the baby kick, as if responding to his father's voice. She placed a hand on her belly, a small smile breaking through her worry. He seems to like it here already. Lucas's eyes lit up. May I? He asked, gesturing towards her bump. Sophia nodded, guiding his hand to where their son was most active. As Lucas felt the strong kicks, his face transformed with wonder and love. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the remnants of their past and the promise of their future, Sophia and Lucas found a fragile peace. The outside world continued to buzz with speculation and scandal, but here, in this space, they were just two people reconnecting, united by the miracle growing between them. As the sun set over the city skyline, casting a warm glow through the penthouse windows, Sophia and Lucas sat side by side, talking softly about doctor's appointments, nursery colors, and the journey ahead. The road was uncertain, filled with challenges both public and private. But for now, they had found a sanctuary, a place to heal, to hope, and perhaps, to fall in love all over again. One morning, as Sophia sat on the balcony, enjoying the rare moment of sunshine, she overheard Lucas on the phone in his home office. I don't care what the board thinks, James. I made my decision. Lucas's voice was firm, but tinged with frustration. No, I won't reconsider. My family comes first now. Sophia's heart skipped a beat at the word family. She placed a hand on her growing belly, conflicting emotions swirling within her. Lucas emerged from his office, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as a sign of stress. When he saw her, his face softened. Hey, he said, joining her on the balcony. How are you feeling today? I'm fine, Sophia replied, studying his face. Lucas, was that about the company? He sighed, leaning against the railing. The board isn't happy with my decision to step down. They're pressuring me to return. Sophia felt a familiar knot of anxiety form in her stomach. And what do you want? Lucas turned to her, his eyes intense. I meant what I said, Sophia. You and our son are my priority now. The company. It can survive without me. Can you survive without it? Sophia asked softly, voicing the fear that had been growing in her mind. Lucas was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting over the city skyline, the empire he'd built, now seemingly just beyond his reach. I don't know, he admitted finally, but I'm willing to try. For us, the honesty in his voice touched something deep within Sophia. She reached out, hesitantly taking his hand. Lucas, I appreciate everything you're doing, but I don't want you to resent us later. Your work. It's part of who you are. Lucas squeezed her hand gently. It was. But people change, Sophia. I've changed. Or at least I'm trying to. Just then, Sophia's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, her face paling slightly. "What is it?" Lucas asked, concern evident in his voice. Sophia handed him the phone. On the screen was a gossip article, complete with paparazzi photos of them on the balcony. Chen's house arrest. Tycoon keeps pregnant ex under close watch. Lucas's jaw clenched as he read the sensationalized headline. "This is ridiculous. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to be subjected to this kind of scrutiny." Sophia stood, pacing the balcony as much as her condition would allow. "This is exactly what I was afraid of, Lucas. Our son isn't even born yet, and already his life is tabloid fodder." Lucas watched her, his expression a mix of guilt and determination. What if we controlled the narrative?" Sophia stopped, turning to him with a questioning look. "We could give one interview," Lucas continued, his mind clearly racing. "Set the record straight on our terms. And then request privacy for the remainder of your pregnancy." Sophia hesitated, weighing the pros and cons. "I don't know, Lucas. Engaging with the media at all feels like opening Pandora's box." Lucas moved closer, his voice soft but earnest. "I understand your hesitation. But think about it, we could tell our story, the real story. Not some sensationalized version dreamed up by gossip columnists." As Sophia pondered his suggestion, she felt the baby kick vigorously. She smiled despite her worries, guiding Lucas's hand to feel the movement. "He seems to have an opinion on the matter," she said with a small laugh. Lucas's face lit up at the contact, as it always did when he felt their son move. In that moment, looking at the joy and love in his eyes, Sophia made her decision. "Okay," she said softly, "one interview. But we do it together and we set strict boundaries." Lucas nodded, relief and gratitude evident in his expression. Together, he agreed. Always, as they stood there, hands intertwined over the life they'd created. The city buzzed below them, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in the penthouse above. Lucas Chen, the man who once prioritized his empire above all else, was reconstructing his world, brick by brick, with Sophia and their unborn son at its center. The challenges ahead were numerous: the prying eyes of the public, the pressures of Lucas's former life, and the delicate balance of rebuilding trust between them. But in that moment, bathed in sunlight on the balcony that had witnessed both their happiest and darkest times, Sophia and Lucas found a glimmer of hope. A hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could rewrite their story, not for the public, but for themselves and the little one who had brought them back together. "Lucas!" she cried out, panic rising in her throat. "Something's wrong." Lucas burst into the room, his eyes wide with fear. "Sophia? What is it?" "The baby," she gasped, clutching her stomach. "It hurts. God! It hurts so much." Without hesitation, Lucas scooped her into his arms, his heart pounding wildly. "Hold on, sweetheart. We're going to the hospital. Everything's going to be okay." The next few hours were a blur of sirens, hospital corridors, and frantic medical jargon. Sophia found herself in a sterile room, surrounded by doctors and nurses, with Lucas by her side, refusing to leave despite the staff's attempts to usher him out. "Mr. Chun, please, we need space to work," a nurse urged. "I'm not leaving her," Lucas said firmly, his hand gripping Sophia's tightly. "Not now, not ever again." Dr. Reynolds appeared, her face grave. "Sophia, Lucas, we need to perform an emergency C-section. The baby's in distress, and we can't risk waiting any longer." Sophia's eyes filled with tears of fear and pain. "But it's too early. He's not ready." Lucas leaned in close, his forehead touching hers. "Listen to me, Sophia. You're the strongest person I know. Our son is strong too. You can do this. We can do this together." As they prepped Sophia for surgery, Lucas donned scrubs, never letting go of her hand. The operating room was a flurry of activity, the beeping of monitors a constant reminder of the precarious situation. "I'm scared, Lucas," Sophia whispered as they wheeled her in. "I know," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." The next 24 hours were the longest of their lives. The surgery itself was a tense, silent affair, broken only by the doctor's clipped instructions and the sudden, miraculous cry of their newborn son. "He's here," Lucas breathed, tears streaming down his face as he caught his first glimpse of their child. "Sophia, he's beautiful." But their joy was short-lived as the medical team whisked the baby away to the NICU, his tiny body dwarfed by the incubator. Hour after hour, Sophia and Lucas kept vigil by their son's side. They watched as he fought for every breath, his little chest rising and falling with the help of machines. "He needs a name," Sophia said softly, her hand resting on the incubator. "We can't keep calling him Baby Boy Chun." Lucas nodded, his eyes never leaving their son's face. "What about Ethan?" "It means strong and enduring." Sophia smiled through her tears. "Ethan Chen is perfect." As dawn broke, casting a soft glow through the NICU windows, Dr. Reynolds approached them with cautious optimism. "He's stabilizing," she said. "The next 24 hours will be critical, but he's showing remarkable strength." Lucas and Sophia exchanged a look of relief and renewed hope. In that moment, all the drama of the past months, the media frenzy, the corporate pressures, the uncertainty of their relationship, faded away. All that mattered was the tiny fighter before them, their son, Ethan. "Sophia," Lucas said, his voice low and intense. "I know this isn't the right time or place, but I love you. I never stopped loving you. Watching you these past hours, seeing your strength, your love for our son. It's reminded me of all the reasons I fell in love with you in the first place." Sophia turned to him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Lucas, I..." But before she could respond, Ethan's monitors began to beep erratically. Nurses rushed in, and once again, Sophia and Lucas found themselves pushed to the sidelines, watching helplessly as their newborn son fought for his life. In that moment of crisis, with their world hanging by a thread, Sophia reached for Lucas's hand. Their fingers intertwined, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. The next few hours would determine not just Ethan's fate, but the course of their lives. As they stood there, united in their love and fear, the sun continued to rise over the city, heralding a new day filled with both peril and possibility. "Come on, Ethan," Lucas whispered, his hand resting gently on the incubator. "You're a Chun. We don't give up without a fight." Sophia, exhausted from the surgery and emotional turmoil, leaned against Lucas's shoulder. "He has your determination," she murmured. "Look at how his little fists are clenched. He's not letting go." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the NICU, Dr. Reynolds approached them, her face a carefully composed mask of professional calm. "Mr. Chun, Ms. Santos," she began, "Ethan's condition is still critical, but he's showing signs of improvement. His oxygen levels are stabilizing, and he's responding well to treatment." A collective sigh of relief escaped both parents. Lucas pulled Sophia closer, pressing a kiss to her temple without thinking. Can we touch him?" Sophia asked hesitantly. Dr. Reynolds nodded. "Yes, but only for a moment. It's important to minimize stimulation right now." With trembling hands, Sophia reached into the incubator, gently placing her finger in Ethan's tiny palm. His fingers instinctively curled around hers, and a sob of joy escaped her. "He's so strong," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Lucas watched, his heart swelling with a love so intense it was almost painful. In that moment, seeing Sophia and their son together, he knew with absolute certainty that he would do anything, give up everything, to protect this fragile new family. As night fell, the NICU quieted. Nurses moved silently between incubators, checking vitals and adjusting equipment. Sophia had finally succumbed to exhaustion, sleeping fitfully in a chair beside Ethan's incubator. Lucas stood guard, his eyes moving between his son and the woman he loved, overwhelmed by the depth of his feelings for both of them. A soft knock on the NICU door startled him. Lucas turned to see his father, Richard Chun, standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Lucas, Richard said softly, approaching cautiously. I came as soon as I heard. Lucas tensed, preparing for another argument about the company, about his responsibilities. But to his surprise, Richard's eyes were fixed on Ethan, a look of wonder on his face. He's beautiful, Richard whispered. He looks just like you did when you were born. Lucas felt a lump form in his throat. Dad, Richard held up a hand, silencing him. No, son. Let me speak. Seeing you here with your family, it's made me realize something. I've spent years teaching you how to build an empire, but I never taught you what really matters. He turned to Lucas, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I'm proud of you, son. Not for the company you built, but for the man you've become. For choosing love and family over business. It's a choice I wish I'd had the courage to make when you were young. Lucas felt years of tension and resentment towards his father begin to melt away. He reached out, pulling Richard into a tight embrace. Thank you, Dad, he whispered, for understanding, for being here. As they broke apart, both men wiping their eyes, Sophia stirred in her chair. She blinked sleepily, taking in the scene before her with surprise. Mr. Chan, she said, her voice hoarse from sleep and emotion. Richard approached her, his usual stern demeanor softened by the gravity of the moment. Sophia, my dear, I owe you an apology for everything. Welcome to the family, officially this time. Sophia's eyes widened, looking between Richard and Lucas in confusion and hope. Lucas moved to her side, taking her hand in his. Sophia, he began, his voice thick with emotion. I know this isn't how we planned it, and God knows we have a lot to work through. But seeing you with Ethan, facing all of this together, it's made me realize something. I don't want to just co-parent with you. I want us to be a real family. He knelt beside her chair, still holding her hand. Sophia Santos, will you marry me? Again, this time, I promise to put you and our son first. Always. The NICU fell silent, the only sound the steady beeping of Ethan's monitors. Sophia looked at Lucas, tears streaming down her face, then at Richard, who nodded encouragingly, and finally at their tiny son, fighting so bravely for life. Lucas, she whispered, her voice trembling. Just then, a sharp alarm from Ethan's monitors cut through the moment. Dr. Reynolds rushed in, her face tense. His oxygen levels are dropping, she announced. We need to act now. As the medical team swarmed around Ethan's incubator, Sophia and Lucas found themselves once again pushed to the sidelines, their hearts racing with fear. In the chaos, Sophia's grip on Lucas's hand tightened, and she turned to him, her eyes filled with determination and love. Yes, she said, her voice barely audible above the alarms. Yes, I'll marry you, because whatever happens next, we face it together. Lucas pulled her close, their foreheads touching, as they watched the doctors fight to save their son's life. The future hung in the balance, filled with both hope and uncertainty, as the Chun family faced their greatest challenge yet. As dawn broke, casting a pale light through the NICU windows, Dr. Reynolds approached them, her face etched with exhaustion but bearing a glimmer of hope. He's stabilized, she announced, a small smile playing at her lips. Ethan's a fighter. His oxygen levels are improving, and he's responding well to treatment. Sophia sagged against Lucas, relief washing over her in waves. Can we see him? She asked, her voice hoarse from hours of unshed tears. Dr. Reynolds nodded, leading them to Ethan's incubator. The tiny boy lay there, his chest rising and falling steadily, various tubes and wires connecting him to life-saving machines. But there was a noticeable difference. His color had improved, and his little fists were clenched tightly, as if ready to take on the world. Hey there, little warrior, Lucas whispered, gently placing his hand on the incubator. You gave us quite a scare. Sophia reached in, softly stroking Ethan's arm with her finger. Mama and Papa are here, baby. We're not going anywhere. As they stood there, marveling at their son's strength, a commotion outside the NICU caught their attention. Through the glass doors, they could see a crowd of reporters gathering, cameras flashing. How did they find out? Sophia gasped, instinctively moving to shield Ethan from view. Lucas's jaw clenched, his protective instincts flaring. "I'll handle this," he said, his voice low and determined. But before he could move, Richard stepped forward. "No, son. Let me deal with them. This time I did something useful for this family." With a nod to Lucas and Sophia, Richard strode out of the NICU, his commanding presence parting the sea of reporters. They watched as he addressed the media, his voice too low to hear but his body language clearly conveying a message of, "Back off or else." "I never thought I'd see the day," Lucas murmured, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Richard Chun, family protector." Sophia squeezed his hand, a small smile playing at her lips despite the tension. "People can surprise you. We're living proof of that, aren't we?" As the reporters began to disperse, Richard returned, looking both satisfied and slightly abashed. "I may have implied that anyone who disturbs my grandson's recovery will face the full legal and financial might of the Chun Empire," he admitted. Lucas chuckled softly, the sound filled with both amusement and gratitude. "Thanks, Dad." Dr. Reynolds approached once more, her clipboard in hand. "If you're ready, we'd like to try something. Kangaroo care skin-to-skin contact. It can be incredibly beneficial for premature babies." Sophia and Lucas exchanged a look of nervous excitement. "Is it safe?" Sophia asked. "We'll monitor him closely," Dr. Reynolds assured them. "But yes, it's safe. And it might be just what Ethan needs right now." With gentle guidance from the nurses, Sophia settled into a reclining chair as they carefully transferred Ethan onto her bare chest. The moment his tiny body touched her skin, Sophia felt a surge of emotion so powerful it took her breath away. "Oh, Lucas," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He's so perfect." Lucas knelt beside them, his hand gently cradling Ethan's head. "He is," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like his mother." As they sat there, the tiny family reunited at last, the world outside seemed to fade away. The beeping monitors, the antiseptic smell of the hospital, the lingering threat of media intrusion, none of it mattered in that moment. Richard watched from a respectful distance, his usually stoic expression softened by the scene before him. He saw not just his grandson, but the rebirth of his family, a second chance for all of them. Sophia looked up at Lucas, her eyes shining with a mix of love, hope, and lingering fear. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Lucas leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead, then to Ethan's. "Now we heal, all of us together, and then," he smiled, a hint of his old confidence returning, "then we show the world what the Chun family is really made of." As Ethan stirred slightly, nuzzling closer to his mother's warmth, a sense of peace settled over the NICU. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, filled with challenges both medical and personal. But in that moment, surrounded by the love of his parents and the protective presence of his grandfather, little Ethan Chun seemed to make a silent promise of his own to fight, to grow, and to bring this once-fractured family together in ways they never imagined possible. The sun rose higher, casting a golden glow over the city skyline visible from the NICU windows. A new day had dawned for the Chin family, full of promise, hope, and the unbreakable bonds of love that had been tested, broken, and ultimately strengthened by the tiny miracle in their arms. One crisp autumn morning, Dr. Reynolds entered with a broad smile on her face. "I have good news," she announced. "Ethan's latest tests show remarkable improvement. We think he's ready to go home." Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Really? He's ready?" Lucas wrapped an arm around her waist, steadying her. "Are you sure, Doctor? He's still so small." Dr. Reynolds nodded reassuringly. "He's exceeded all our expectations. Of course, you'll need to be vigilant, and there will be frequent checkups. But Ethan is ready for the next chapter of his journey." As the reality sank in, Sophia turned to Lucas, her eyes brimming with tears of joy and trepidation. "We're taking our baby home," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Lucas pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "We are. Together." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity, last-minute instructions from nurses, paperwork to sign, and finally, the surreal moment of placing Ethan in his car seat for the first time. As they stepped out of the hospital, a small crowd had gathered, not reporters this time, but friends, family, and hospital staff who had become invested in Ethan's journey. Soft applause and words of encouragement followed them as Lucas carefully secured the car seat. The drive home was silent, both parents acutely aware of the precious cargo they carried. Sophia kept turning in her seat, checking on Ethan, who slept peacefully, oblivious to the momentous occasion. As they pulled up to their building, Lucas hesitated before turning off the engine. "Sophia," he said softly, "before we go up, I need to show you something." Curiosity piqued. Sophia followed Lucas to the elevator, Ethan secure in his arms. Instead of pressing the button for their floor, Lucas hit the penthouse level. "Lucas, what's going on?" Sophia asked, a mix of confusion and excitement in her voice. The elevator doors opened to reveal a completely transformed space. The once minimalist penthouse had been turned into a warm, inviting home. Soft colors, comfortable furnishings, and touches of both their personal styles blended seamlessly. "Welcome home," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "To our home. All of us." Sophia stepped into the space, her eyes wide with wonder. She noticed familiar pieces from her old apartment mixed with new items, creating a perfect fusion of their lives. "When did you do all this?" she asked, running her hand along a beautifully crafted wooden crib in the corner of the living room. "I had some help," Lucas admitted with a smile. "Your mother was instrumental in getting the details right. And my father, well, he insisted on overseeing the security upgrades himself." As if on cue, the elevator dinged again, revealing their parents, Amelia Santos and Richard Chun, standing side by side, tentative smiles on their faces. "Surprise, Querida," Amelia said softly, moving to embrace her daughter and grandson. Richard cleared his throat, looking uncharacteristically emotional. "We thought you might appreciate some support for Ethan's first night home." Sophia looked around at her rebuilt family. Lucas, steady and loving by her side. Ethan, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Their parents, putting aside old grievances for the sake of this new life. Tears welled in her eyes as the magnitude of the moment hit her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "All of you." As night fell over the city, the Nuchin family settled into their home. Sophia sat in a rocking chair by the window, Ethan nestled against her chest. Lucas knelt beside them, his hand gently stroking Ethan's back. "I never thought we'd be here," Sophia admitted softly. "After everything, it seemed impossible." Lucas met her gaze, his eyes filled with love and determination. "Nothing's impossible when it comes to us, Sophia. We've been given a second chance, and I intend to make the most of it. Every day for the rest of our lives." As Ethan stirred slightly, making a soft cooing sound, both parents looked down at him in wonder. In that moment, the challenges of the past months, the media scrutiny, the medical scares, the rebuilding of trust all seemed to fade away. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, but inside the penthouse, a newfound peace reigned. The Chun family had weathered its toughest storm and emerged stronger, more united than ever before. As Sophia and Lucas shared a tender kiss over their sleeping son's head, the future stretched out before them. Not the carefully planned, corporate-driven future they once envisioned, but something far more precious. A future built on love, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond of family. The night deepened, stars twinkling over the sprawling cityscape, and in a penthouse high above it all, a family that had once been broken found itself whole again, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. One crisp autumn morning, Sophia stood on the balcony, watching the city come to life below. She felt Lucas's arms wrap around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts?" he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to her neck. Sophia leaned back into his embrace, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I never would have imagined this," Lucas turned her gently to face him, his eyes filled with love and a hint of apprehension. "Are you happy, Sophia? Truly happy?" She cupped his face in her hands, studying the man before her. The sharp edges of the corporate tycoon had softened, replaced by the warmth of a devoted father and partner. "I am," she whispered, "more than I ever thought possible." Their moment was interrupted by Ethan's cry from the nursery. They shared a knowing smile before Sophia went to tend to their son. As she lifted Ethan from his crib, cooing softly to soothe him, Lucas appeared in the doorway. His face was a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Sophia," he began, his voice slightly hesitant. "There's something I want to discuss with you." She turned, Ethan nestled against her chest. "What is it?" Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as a sign of his unease. "I've been thinking about the future. Our future." Sophia felt a flutter of anxiety in her stomach. "Lucas, you're not thinking of going back to the company, are you?" He shook his head quickly. No, nothing like that. Actually, I've been working on something new. A project that combines my business experience with what really matters." Intrigued, Sophia settled into the rocking chair, Ethan now calm in her arms. "I'm listening." Lucas knelt beside them, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I want to start a foundation, one that focuses on supporting families with premature babies, providing resources, funding research, helping parents who can't afford the kind of care Ethan received." Sophia's eyes widened as she absorbed his words. "Lucas, that's amazing." He took her free hand in his, squeezing gently. "But I don't want to do it alone. I want us to do this together, Sophia. Your experience as a dancer, your creativity, your compassion, they're all vital to making this work." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as the magnitude of what Lucas was proposing sank in. "You really mean it? You want us to be partners in this?" Lucas nodded, his own eyes glistening. "In everything, Sophia. Always." Just then, Ethan let out a happy gurgle, his tiny hand reaching out to grasp Lucas's finger. Both parents laughed, the tension of the moment broken by their son's perfect timing. "I think someone approves," Sophia said, smiling down at Ethan. Lucas leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to Ethan's forehead, then to Sophia's lips. "So, what do you say? Are you ready for a new adventure?" Sophia looked at the man before her, the man who had once prioritized business over everything, now proposing a venture born of love and compassion. She thought of their journey, the challenges they'd overcome, and the future stretching out before them. "Yes," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "Yes to the foundation, yes to our future, yes to everything. As long as we're together." As if on cue, the morning sun broke through the clouds, bathing the nursery in warm, golden light. Sophia and Lucas shared a look of understanding, of love deepened by struggle and renewed by hope. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace. But inside the penthouse, a family stood on the brink of a new chapter. The Chun name, once synonymous with corporate power, was about to take on a new meaning, one of healing, of giving back, of love made stronger by adversity. Ethan cooed softly, his eyes drifting closed, secure in his mother's arms and his father's presence. And as Sophia and Lucas began to excitedly discuss their plans for the foundation, the future seemed to unfold before them, bright, challenging, and filled with the promise of making a difference, not just in their lives, but in the lives of countless other families. The story of Sophia, Lucas, and Ethan Chun was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning, a testament to the power of love, second chances, and the unbreakable bonds of family. "You look stunning," Lucas whispered as he passed by, squeezing her hand. His eyes shone with pride and love. Sophia felt a flutter in her chest, still amazed at how Lucas could make her feel after all they'd been through. "And you clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Chun," she teased back. As Lucas moved to address the crowd, Sophia's gaze drifted to a corner of the room where her mother, Amelia, was entertaining a now 2-year-old Ethan. The boys' laughter rang out, drawing smiles from nearby guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lucas began, his voice commanding the room's attention. "Thank you all for being here tonight. A year ago, my wife Sophia and I embarked on a journey we never expected." As Lucas shared their story, Sophia felt a wave of emotion wash over her. The memories of those terrifying early days in the NICU, the uncertainty, the fear, it all came rushing back. But now, those memories were tempered by the joy of watching Ethan grow, of rebuilding their family, of finding a new purpose. "And that's why we founded the Chun Family Foundation," Lucas continued, "to ensure that every family facing the challenges of premature birth has the support and resources they need." Applause filled the room, but Sophia barely heard it. Her eyes were locked on Lucas, marveling at the transformation in the man she'd once left. Gone was the cold, calculating businessman. In his place stood a passionate advocate, a devoted father, a loving husband. As Lucas finished his speech, Sophia felt a tug on her dress. She looked down to see Ethan, who had escaped his grandmother's watchful eye. "Mama, up," he demanded, arms raised. Sophia scooped him up, pressing a kiss to his chubby cheek. "Did you enjoy Papa's speech, my love?" Ethan nodded solemnly before burying his face in her neck, suddenly shy in front of the crowd. Lucas joined them, wrapping an arm around Sophia's waist. "There's my family," he said softly, his voice full of warmth. As they stood there, a perfect tableau of the family they'd fought so hard to build, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Sophia's breath caught as she recognized the figure making his way through the crowd. "Is that?" Lucas began, his body tensing slightly. Sophia nodded, her grip on Ethan tightening instinctively. "Dr. Reynolds." The doctor who had guided them through Ethan's precarious first months approached, her face a mix of emotions. "Sophia, Lucas," she greeted them warmly. "And this must be Ethan. My, how you've grown." Ethan peeked out from Sophia's shoulder, offering a shy smile. "Doctor, we're so glad you could make it," Lucas said, extending his hand. "Your support means the world to us." Dr. Reynolds shook his hand, then turned to Sophia. "Actually, I'm here with some news. News that I think will be of great interest to the foundation." Sophia and Lucas exchanged a glance, a mix of curiosity and apprehension passing between them. "What kind of news?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Reynolds took a deep breath, her eyes shining with excitement. "We've had a breakthrough in our research on preventing preterm labor. A treatment that could potentially help thousands of women carry to term." The world seemed to slow down as the implications of her words sank in. Sophia felt tears welling up in her eyes, memories of her own difficult pregnancy flooding back. Lucas's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. "And you think the foundation could help bring this treatment to those who need it most?" Dr. Reynolds nodded. "With your resources and influence, we could fast-track clinical trials, make it accessible to families who can't afford cutting-edge treatments." As the doctor continued explaining the potential of this new treatment, Sophia and Lucas shared a look of understanding. This was why they had started the foundation. This was the difference they had hoped to make. Ethan, sensing the weight of the moment, reached out to touch his father's face. "Papa happy?" he asked innocently. Lucas chuckled, blinking back tears. "Yes, son. Papa's very happy." Sophia leaned into Lucas's embrace, her heart full to bursting. "We did it," she whispered. "We really did it." As the gala continued around them, the Chun family stood united, on the cusp of a new adventure. The foundation that had been born from their pain and hope was about to make waves in the medical world, potentially changing the lives of countless families. The future stretched out before them, filled with promise and purpose. And as Sophia looked at Lucas, at Ethan, at the room full of supporters, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger for all they had overcome, and ready to take on the world. One crisp autumn morning, Sophia stood in the kitchen of their penthouse, absently stirring her coffee as she watched Lucas and Ethan on the balcony. The sight of her once ruthless businessman husband patiently teaching their son how to fly a kite still filled her with wonder. Her reverie was interrupted by the sharp ring of Lucas's phone on the counter. Glancing at the screen, She saw it was Richard Chen calling. With a deep breath, she answered. "Good morning, Richard," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "Sophia," Richard's tone was unusually hesitant. "Is Lucas available? There's something I need to discuss with both of you." A knot of anxiety formed in Sophia's stomach. "Of course. Let me get him." As Lucas came in from the balcony, Ethan trailing behind him, Sophia mouthed, "Your father," and handed him the phone. She watched as Lucas's expression shifted from joy to concern as he listened to Richard. "We'll be right there," Lucas said, finally ending the call. He turned to Sophia, his face pale. "Dad's in the hospital. He had a heart attack last night." Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Despite their rocky history, Richard had become an integral part of their family, doting on Ethan and supporting the foundation. "Is he okay?" she asked, already moving to gather their things. Lucas shook his head, looking lost. "They're not sure. He wants to see us." The drive to the hospital was tense, with Ethan picking up on his parents' worry and becoming uncharacteristically quiet in his car seat. As they rushed through the hospital corridors, Sophia's mind raced with memories of her own time in these sterile halls, of the fear and hope that had defined Ethan's early days. They found Richard in a private room, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Sophia had ever seen him. The mighty Richard Chun, brought low by his own mortality. "Dad," Lucas breathed, moving quickly to his father's bedside. Richard's eyes flickered open, a weak smile crossing his face. "Lucas, Sophia, you came." Sophia stepped forward, Ethan in her arms. "Of course we came. We're family." Richard's gaze settled on Ethan, his expression softening. "There's my boy. Come here, Ethan." As Sophia lowered Ethan onto the bed, careful of the various tubes and wires, Richard reached out a shaky hand to touch his grandson's cheek. "I'm sorry," Richard said suddenly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for all the years I wasted. For the pressure I put on you, Lucas. For not understanding what really mattered." Lucas gripped his father's hand, tears welling in his eyes. "Dad, don't. You've more than made up for it." With Ethan, with the foundation, Richard shook his head weakly. "No, let me say this. Seeing you two, the family you've built, the good you're doing, it's made me realize how wrong I was. About so much." Sophia felt tears streaming down her own cheeks as she watched the exchange between father and son. The wounds of the past, long scabbed over, seemed to be healing before her eyes. "I'm proud of you," Richard continued, his breathing labored. "Both of you. And I want you to know, I've made some changes. To my will, to the company structure." Lucas tensed. "Dad? What are you saying?" Richard's eyes, though tired, held a spark of their old determination. "I'm saying that when I'm gone, you'll have full control. Not just of my shares, but of the entire Chen Empire. To use as you see fit. For the foundation, for your family, for whatever you believe in." The room fell silent, save for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Sophia looked at Lucas, seeing the weight of his father's words settle on his shoulders. "Dad," Lucas began, his voice cracking, "you're going to be fine. We can talk about this later." Richard chuckled weakly. "Always the optimist. But just in case, promise me you'll use it well. That you'll continue to make a difference." Lucas nodded, unable to speak. Sophia stepped forward, placing her hand on Richard's arm. "We promise," she said softly. "For Ethan, for all the families we can help. We'll make you proud." As if sensing the gravity of the moment, Ethan reached out and patted Richard's cheek. "Love you, Grandpa," he said in his small voice. Richard's eyes filled with tears as he looked at his family. The son he'd nearly lost to his own ambition, the daughter-in-law who had helped reshape their legacy, and the grandson who represented all their hopes for the future. As the sun began to set outside the hospital window, casting a warm glow over the room, the Chun family huddled close around Richard's bed. The future, once again, felt uncertain. But in that moment, surrounded by love and the promise of a legacy reborn, they found strength in each other. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced every obstacle together, with courage, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to the power of family. One evening, as the city lights flickered to life outside their penthouse windows, Sophia found Lucas in his home office, surrounded by stacks of papers and glowing computer screens. The lines of fatigue etched on his face made her heart ache. "Lucas," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's late. Come to bed." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion. "I can't, Sophia. There's so much to do. The board is pushing for answers. The shareholders are nervous, and the foundation." Sophia knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. "And you're no good to anyone if you run yourself into the ground. When was the last time you saw Ethan awake?" The question hit Lucas like a physical blow. He closed his eyes, pain etching across his features. "God, I'm turning into my father, aren't I? Putting business before family." "No," Sophia said firmly. "You're not, but you're trying to carry the weight of two worlds on your shoulders. Let me help." Lucas met her gaze, vulnerability shining in his eyes. "How?" "Sophia, this is a mess I never wanted to drag you into. The corporate world, the politics, the endless meetings." Sophia stood, gently pulling Lucas to his feet. "I may not know the intricacies of corporate law or stock markets, but I know people. I know how to tell a story, how to make people feel something. Let me be your partner in this, truly." As they moved to the living room, they found Ethan asleep on the couch, surrounded by his toys. Lucas's breath caught in his throat at the sight. "He wanted to wait up for you," Sophia explained softly. "He misses his papa." Lucas scooped Ethan into his arms, holding him close. The little boy stirred slightly, mumbling "Papa," before settling back into sleep. "I'm sorry," Lucas whispered, more to Ethan than to Sophia. "I promise I'll do better." Sophia wrapped her arms around both of them, creating a cocoon of warmth and love. "We'll do better together. Now, tell me everything. From the beginning." As the night deepened, Lucas and Sophia sat on the couch, Ethan sleeping peacefully between them, and began to untangle the complex web of the Chun Empire. Sophia listened intently, asking questions, offering insights from her unique perspective outside the corporate world. "What if," she said hesitantly as dawn began to break, "what if we used this as an opportunity to reshape the company, align it more closely with the foundation's goals?" Lucas looked at her, a spark of the old fire returning to his eyes. "You mean turn Chun Enterprises into a force for good? Not just profit, but actual measurable positive impact?" Sophia nodded, excitement building. "Exactly. Imagine the headlines. Chun Empire pivots to social responsibility. We could set a new standard for corporate ethics." As they continued to brainstorm, bouncing ideas off each other with growing enthusiasm, neither noticed Ethan stirring until his small voice piped up. "Papa, Mama, why you awake?" he asked sleepily. Lucas and Sophia exchanged a look, then burst into laughter. The sound seemed to chase away the last shadows of doubt and fear that had been lingering in the corners of their home. "We're awake because we're dreaming, little one," Lucas said, pulling Ethan onto his lap. "Dreaming of a better world for you to grow up in." Sophia watched as Lucas began to explain to Ethan in simple terms about the family business and the foundation. The sight of them together, Lucas's eyes alight with passion and purpose, Ethan hanging on every word, filled her heart with